I still remember the exact weight of that champagne glass in my hand. Waterford crystal, 185 per stem. I bought a set of 12 for our 25th anniversary, and Richard never once noticed they weren't the same ones his mother had given us. That's the thing about 30 years of marriage. You learn what he notices and what he doesn't. He noticed when the gardener trimmed the hedges a quarter inch too short. He noticed when his coffee was 2 degrees below scalding, but he never noticed me. Not really. My name is Olivia Brennan. I'm 52 years old, and on March 15th, 2024, my husband announced he was divorcing me in front of 43 guests at our 30th wedding anniversary dinner. I counted them. The guests, I mean. I had nothing else to do while he spoke. The party was my idea, of course. Everything was always my idea. The venue, our own home, the mansion on Round Hill Road in Greenwich, Connecticut. 12,000 square feet of Italian marble and French windows and lies. I'd spent 3 months planning every detail. The caterer from Manhattan, the string quartet from Juilliard, the flowers, white peonies and dusty pink roses, flown in from Ecuador. Cost $47,000. I have the receipts. I kept every receipt for 30 years, organized in labeled folders in my office. Richard never asked to see them. He just signed the checks, or rather, I signed them. He gave me signatory authority on the household account in 1996. You handle the boring stuff, he said. I'll handle the money. The boring stuff, that's what he called raising 3 children, managing a 12,000 square foot home, coordinating with 4 housekeepers, 2 gardeners, a chef, and a driver, hosting charity galas, attending board meetings as Mrs. Brennan, smiling, always smiling. The guests arrived at 7. Richard came down at 7:30, fashionably late to his own party. He wore the Tom Ford suit I'd picked out for him, navy blue, $5,200, and the Patek Philippe watch he'd bought himself for his 50th birthday, $87,000. I remember because he showed me the receipt, proud as a child. You look beautiful, he said when he saw me. I was wearing a black Valentino gown, simple, elegant, $30,400. I'd lost 11 pounds in the past 2 months, stress melting the fat from my bones, and the dress hung a little loose around my hips. Thank you, I said. He kissed my cheek. His lips were dry. He smelled like Macallan 18, and the cologne I'd bought him for Christmas, Tom Ford Oud Wood, $350 a bottle. I know the price of everything in my life. It's a habit you develop when you're married to a man who measures worth in dollars. The dinner was perfect. Filet mignon, medium rare, lobster bisque, a 7-layer chocolate cake from that bakery in Soho that requires a 3-week advance order. The guests laughed and drank and told Richard how lucky he was. 30 years, said Bob Patterson, Richard's business partner. That's an eternity in this day and age. Couldn't have done it without Olivia, Richard said, raising his glass. Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine. The Waterford crystal caught the light from the chandelier, a Murano piece I'd found in Venice on our 15th anniversary trip. Richard had complained about the price, $34,000. It's just a light fixture, he'd said, but he let me buy it. He always let me buy things. That was his way of showing love, or what I thought was love. At 9:15, Richard stood up. He clinked his knife against his glass. Sterling silver, part of the set my mother had given us as a wedding gift. The room fell silent. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, he said. 30 years is a long time. A lot has changed. I've built a company worth $340 million. I've raised 3 children. I've lived in this beautiful home. He paused. I noticed he said I and not we. But some things have to end, he continued. And tonight I have an announcement to make. I felt it before he said it. A cold weight settling in my chest. The way you feel when you're driving and you see the deer in the headlights and you know you can't stop in time. Olivia and I are getting a divorce. The room went silent. I mean completely silent. You could hear the ice melting in the glasses. Richard kept talking. His voice was calm, practiced. He'd rehearsed this, I realized. Probably in front of a mirror. Probably with his lawyer standing by. It's been a long time coming, he said. We've grown apart. These things happen, but I want to be fair about this. Olivia has been a good wife, a good mother, and she deserves to be taken care of. He turned to me, smiled. That smile I'd loved for 30 years. That smile I'd believed in. I'll be keeping the house, he said. And the cars. And the company, of course. But Olivia, he paused, and something flickered in his eyes. Something cold. Olivia can keep Tyler. Laughter. A few nervous laughs from the back of the room. Bob Patterson's wife, Linda, covered her mouth. You can keep the boy, Richard said, louder now, playing to the audience. He's about as useful as you are. I didn't move, didn't blink. I just stood there, holding my champagne glass, the Waterford crystal, $185 per stem, and I watched my husband destroy 30 years of my life in front of everyone we knew. Tyler was in the corner, my son, 27 years old, still living off his father's credit cards, still finding himself. He looked at me, and for a moment I thought I saw shame in his eyes. Then he looked away. My daughters weren't there. Amanda and Sophie, my girls, the ones I'd adopted before I married Richard, the ones he never fully accepted, were home in their apartment in Stamford. Richard hadn't invited them. Family only, he said, as if they weren't family. Veronica was there, though, Richard's older sister, 55 years old, partner at a white shoe law firm in Manhattan, and she'd hated me since the day we met. She stood near the fireplace, a glass of Cabernet in her hand, and she was smiling. Not the nervous smiles of the other guests, a real smile, like she'd been waiting for this moment for 30 years. Richard finished his speech, something about new beginnings and mutual respect. I wasn't listening anymore. I was counting. 43 guests, $47,000 for the party, 30 years, 3 children, 1 husband, 0 dignity left. When he finished, he raised his glass again. To the future, he said. No one drank. I set my glass down on the table. Carefully, gently. I didn't spill a drop, and then I looked at my husband, at this man I'd given everything to, and I said the only thing I could think of. Okay, that's it. Just okay. Richard blinked. He'd expected tears, I think, or screaming, or begging. That's what he wanted. A scene. Something he could use later to prove I was unstable. But I didn't give him that. I just said okay, and I turned and walked out of the dining room, past the 43 guests, past Veronica with her satisfied smile, past my son who wouldn't meet my eyes. I walked upstairs to our bedroom, no, his bedroom now, and I sat on the edge of the bed and I stared at the wall. The wall had a painting on it, a Monet print, not an original, but a good reproduction. I'd bought it at an auction in 1998 for $12,000 because Richard said he liked Impressionism. He'd never once looked at it. I sat there for 2 hours. I heard the guests leave. I heard cars starting, doors closing, the caterers cleaning up. I heard Richard's voice downstairs laughing with someone, probably Bob, probably Veronica. At 11:45, I got up. I wasn't going to cry. I'd decided that. Whatever else happened, I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of my tears. Instead, I walked down the hall to Richard's office. The door was unlocked, unusual because he always locked it. Inside, everything was exactly as it always was. The mahogany desk he'd inherited from his father, the leather chair that cost more than my first car, the shelves lined with books he'd never read, and on the desk, a black folder. I don't know why I opened it. Curiosity, maybe, or instinct. 30 years of marriage teaches you when something is wrong, even if you can't explain how you know. The folder contained 3 documents, legal papers, dense with fine print and notary stamps and signatures. I'm not a lawyer, but I was a real estate broker before I married Richard. I know how to read a mortgage, and these were mortgages, 3 of them, on the house, on our house, totaling $14, $2 million. The house was worth $18 million. Richard had told me that 100 times. Our biggest asset, he'd say, our nest egg, but according to these documents, the nest egg had a crack, a big one. I flipped to the signature page. Richard's name was there, of course, but there was another name too, a co-signer, a guarantor, Veronica Brennan Wells, power of attorney. I stared at that name for a long time. Veronica, his sister, the lawyer, the one who'd smiled when he humiliated me. She'd known, she'd helped him, and at the bottom of the folder, tucked beneath the mortgage papers, was a flash drive. Black plastic, no label. I slipped it into my pocket. Downstairs I could hear Richard's footsteps, coming up the stairs, coming to the bedroom, coming to gloat, probably, or to tell me to pack my things. I closed the folder, put it back exactly where I'd found it, and I walked out of the office, down the back stairs, and out the kitchen door. My car was in the garage, a Mercedes E-Class, 3 years old. Richard's name on the title, of course. Everything was in Richard's name, but the keys were in my purse. I drove to the only place I could think of, a Marriott off I-95, 20 minutes away. I paid cash for the room, $189 plus tax, and I sat on the stiff hotel bed and I took out the flash drive and I looked at it. I didn't have a laptop with me. That would have to wait, but I had the folder's image burned into my brain. 3 mortgages, 14, $2 million. Veronica's signature. Richard wanted the house. He'd announced it in front of 43 guests. He'd humiliated me to get it, and the house was drowning in debt he'd never told me about. I lay back on the hotel bed. The ceiling had a water stain in the corner. The air conditioner rattled. Outside, trucks roared past on the highway. For the first time in 30 years, I smiled. Not because I was happy. I wasn't. I was broken, humiliated, terrified. But I smiled because I understood something. Richard thought he'd won. He thought he'd taken everything. He had no idea what I'd just found, and he had no idea what I was going to do with it. The morning after the dinner party, I woke up in that Marriott hotel room with a stiff neck and a clarity I hadn't felt in years. It was 6:47 a.m. Grey light filtered through the cheap curtains. The highway noise had never stopped, not even at 3 a.m. when I finally fell asleep. I took a shower. The water pressure was weak, nothing like the rainfall shower head in our master bathroom. Our bathroom? No, his bathroom now. I dressed in the same clothes I'd worn to the party. The Valentino gown was wrinkled, inappropriate for morning, but I had nothing else. I'd left the mansion with my purse and nothing more. By 8:15, I was sitting in a diner 2 blocks from the hotel. Coffee and scrambled eggs. $14, $50. I paid cash. My phone had 47 missed calls. Richard, Veronica, numbers I didn't recognize. One from Tyler at 2:34 a.m. I didn't listen to the voicemail. I did listen to Amanda's message. My daughter, 24 years old, working as a social worker in Stamford, living with her sister Sophie in a 2-bedroom apartment they could barely afford. Mom, Amanda's voice said. Mom, I saw the news. Someone posted a video online. Are you okay? Please call me, please. I called her. Mom, she answered on the first ring. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm fine, I said. I'm at a diner. I'm eating breakfast. What happened? The video. He said those things in front of everyone. I know what he said. Silence. Then, what are you going to do? I looked at my coffee. Black. Bitter. Not nearly hot enough. I don't know yet. You can stay with us. Sophie and I talked about it. You can have her room. She'll sleep on the couch. Thank you, sweetheart. But not yet. I need to figure some things out first. Mom, please, don't go back to that house. Don't go back to him. I thought about the black folder, the mortgages, Veronica's signature, the flash drive in my purse. I won't, I said. I promise. After breakfast, I drove to Stamford. Not to Amanda's apartment, but to a FedEx store with computer rentals. I paid $15 for 30 minutes and plugged in the flash drive. The contents loaded slowly. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. There were folders, dozens of them, financial records, emails, scanned contracts. I didn't have time to read everything, but I saw enough. Brennan Development Group, Richard's company, the company I'd helped build with my parents' inheritance, the company worth $340 million, according to Richard, except it wasn't worth $340 million. The documents showed loans, bank Bank loans, private loans, lines of credit, all secured by personal guarantees. Richard's signature on every one. I added the numbers in my head. Then I added them again because the first total couldn't be right. $47 million. Richard had personally guaranteed $47 million in loans for the company. If the company failed, he would owe that money, not the corporation. Him, personally. And the company was failing. I could see it in the cash flow statements. Revenue down to 23% last year. 3 major projects stalled. Contractors unpaid for months. Richard was drowning, and he hadn't told me. I copied everything to my email, then deleted the history on the computer. I walked out of the FedEx store with a flash drive back in my purse and a new understanding of my husband. He didn't want the divorce because he'd stopped loving me. He wanted the divorce because he needed to hide assets before the creditors came calling, and he wanted me gone before I figured it out. I was too late to stop the divorce, but I wasn't too late to make him regret it. At noon, my phone rang. Veronica, I answered. Olivia. Her voice was smooth, professional, the voice she used in depositions. We need to talk. I'm listening. Not on the phone. Meet me at the house. 1 o'clock. The house whose locks you probably changed this morning. A pause. The staff will let you in. We need to discuss the settlement. I'm sure we do. I drove to Greenwich. The house looked the same as always. White columns, manicured lawn, the American dream, if the dream included $14, $2 million in hidden mortgages. Veronica met me in the living room. She was wearing a grey Armani suit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, her face expressionless. Sit down, she said. I'll stand. She sighed, the way you sigh at a difficult child. Fine, let's be direct. Richard is prepared to offer you a settlement. $500,000. The 2021 Mercedes, and you walk away. Walk away from what, exactly? From everything. The house, the company, any claims on marital assets. I looked around the living room, the Murano chandelier I'd bought in Venice, the Persian rug I'd found at an estate sale in New Haven, the furniture I'd chosen, the art I'd curated, the home I'd built. And if I don't accept? Veronica's eyes hardened. Then we go to court, and Richard will be forced to reveal certain concerns about your mental state. My mental state. You've been under a lot of stress. Everyone can see that. The party last night, you barely reacted. Some might say that's a sign of dissociation, of emotional instability. Understood then. This was the threat. Accept the scraps, or they would destroy me. I have a psychiatrist willing to testify. Veronica continued. Dr. Harold Finch. He's very respected, very credible, and very expensive, I imagine. She smiled. Richard can afford the best. I walked to the window. The garden was perfect, as always. Roberto, the groundskeeper, had planted new tulips along the walkway. He'd worked for us for 15 years. Richard had never learned his name. I need time to think, I said. You have 5 days. After that, the offer expires, and we proceed with litigation. 5 days. Consider carefully, Olivia. You have no income, no assets in your name, no career to return to. What exactly are you going to fight with? I turned to face her. This woman who had hated me for 30 years. This woman who had helped her brother hide millions in debt. This woman who was now trying to throw me out of my own life with $500,000 and a used car. I'll consider carefully, I said. You should do the same. Something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe, or recognition that I wasn't breaking down the way she'd expected. I walked out of the house without looking back. That evening, Tyler called. My son, the one Richard had said I could keep. I was in Amanda's apartment by then, sitting on her worn couch, drinking tea that Sophie had made for me. Mom, Tyler said when I answered. We need to talk. So, talk. Not on the phone. Can I come over? I gave him the address. He arrived an hour later, still wearing his expensive clothes, his designer watch, his father's entitled expression. Mom, he said, standing in the doorway of Amanda's tiny living room. This is where you're staying? For now. He looked around. The second-hand furniture, the water stain on the ceiling, the cramped kitchen visible through the open doorway. This is ridiculous, he said. You should be at the house. You should be fighting for what's yours. Is that what you think? He sat down across from me. Sophie had retreated to the bedroom. Amanda was at work. Mum, I know Dad was harsh, but he's willing to negotiate. Aunt Veronica told me. If you just sign the agreement, did your aunt tell you what's in the agreement? She said it's fair. $500,000. Tyler, I set down my tea. Your father built a company on my parents' money. $320,000. Every penny they left me. Did you know that? He shifted uncomfortably. That was a long time ago. Yes, it was. And in 30 years, I never saw a dime of return on that investment. Never had my name on any document. Never had any ownership, any say, any control. I gave up my career. I gave up my independence. I gave up everything. And now your father wants to give me less than half of what I invested 3 decades ago, adjusted for nothing. Tyler was silent. Did your aunt tell you about the mortgages on the house? His face went blank. Too blank. What mortgages? He knew. I could see it in the way he wouldn't meet my eyes. Tyler, whose side are you on? He stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot and the highway beyond. Mom, I'm not on anyone's side. I just want this to be over. Dad said if I help him, he'll make me a partner in the company. He'll set me up. I'll never have to worry about money. The company that's $47 million in debt? He spun around. How do you know about that? I didn't answer. I just looked at him. My son, 27 years old, raised in luxury, educated at the best schools, given every advantage, and he was willing to betray his mother for the promise of money that didn't exist. Get out, I said. Mom, get out, Tyler. Go back to your father. Tell him whatever you want, but don't come back here until you've decided what kind of man you want to be. He left. I heard his car start in the parking lot, the expensive rumble of the engine Richard had bought him for his 25th birthday. Sophie came out of the bedroom. Are you okay? I picked up my tea. It had gone cold. I will be. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the flash drive, about the numbers, about Veronica's cold smile and Tyler's blank expression. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Brennan, this is Carlos, the driver. I need to speak with you. It's important. Please call when you can. Carlos, Richard's driver for 15 years. The quiet man who had driven me to countless appointments, charity events, doctor's visits. The man who had seen everything and said nothing. I saved the number. I would call him tomorrow. But first I lay in the dark and I made a list in my head. The people who had betrayed me, Richard, Veronica, Tyler, the housekeepers who had covered for Monica, the accountants who had hidden the debts, the lawyers who had prepared the documents I was never meant to see. And then I made another list. The people who were still on my side. Amanda, Sophie, maybe Carlos. 3 people against an army. But I had something they didn't know about. I had the flash drive. I had the truth. And I was done being the wife who smiled and signed whatever they put in front of her. 3 days later, the pressure intensified. Veronica sent a courier with a 40-page settlement agreement. I was supposed to sign every page. Richard's lawyer sent a letter threatening to freeze my credit cards if I didn't cooperate. And Tyler, my own son, called Veronica while I was in the room at Amanda's apartment, not knowing I was listening on the kitchen phone. She's scared, he said. I can tell. If we push harder, she'll sign. I set the phone down quietly. My hands were steady. My heart was cold. They thought I was weak. They thought 30 years of being Mrs. Brennan had made me soft. They had no idea who I used to be, and they had no idea who I was about to become. They came for me on a Tuesday. It was April 2nd, 2024, 18 days after the dinner party. I was staying at Amanda's apartment, sleeping on her couch, trying to figure out my next move. At 7:15 a.m., someone knocked on the door. Amanda was already at work. Sophie was in class. I was alone. I opened the door to find 2 police officers and a woman in a grey pantsuit holding a clipboard. Olivia Brennan? The woman asked. Yes, I'm Dr. Patricia Hendricks from Westport Psychiatric Center. We have a court order for your temporary evaluation. She handed me a document. I read it twice, my hands trembling. Involuntary psychiatric hold, 72 hours. Signed by a judge in Stamford. The petition had been filed by Veronica Brennan Wells, citing concerns about Mrs. Brennan's mental state and potential danger to herself. This is a mistake, I said. I'm not a danger to anyone. Mom, we're just following the court order. You can contest it after the evaluation period. I have rights. I want to call my lawyer. You'll have access to a phone at the facility. They didn't handcuff me. They didn't need to. I went quietly because I knew that resisting would only make me look more unstable. That was the trap. Fight and you prove you're crazy. Submit and you lose everything. I submitted. The drive to Westport took 45 minutes. I sat in the back of a white van with no windows, watching the road through a small grate. The seats were plastic. The air smelled like disinfectant. Westport Psychiatric Center was a low brick building surrounded by manicured lawns. It looked like a spa. It felt like a prison. They took my clothes. They took my phone. They took my purse with the flash drive inside. Personal belongings will be returned upon discharge, a nurse told me. Standard procedure. Standard procedure. I'd heard that phrase 100 times in the next 72 hours. They put me in a room with white walls, a narrow bed, and a window that didn't open. The bathroom had no door. The mirror was made of polished metal, not glass. Nothing I could use to hurt myself, because that was what they were implying, that I was suicidal, that the humiliation at the dinner party had broken me, that I needed to be observed for my own safety. I wasn't suicidal. I was furious. But fury in a psychiatric facility looks a lot like instability, so I kept quiet. On the first day, I met with Dr. Harold Finch, the psychiatrist Veronica had mentioned. He was 60 years old, with silver hair and kind eyes that didn't match the coldness of his questions. How are you feeling, Mrs. Brennan? I feel like I've been kidnapped by my husband's family. He wrote something in his notebook. That's a strong word, kidnapped. What word would you use for being taken from my home against my will and locked in a facility? You're not locked in. You're being evaluated. There's a difference. Can I leave? After 72 hours, yes. If the evaluation determines you're not a danger to yourself or others. And who determines that? He smiled. I do. I understood then. Veronica had bought him. Maybe not with money, maybe with connections, favors, the promise of future referrals. It didn't matter how. What mattered was that my freedom depended on a man who had already decided I was unstable. I spent the first night staring at the ceiling. The mattress was thin. The sheets smelled like bleach. Every hour, a nurse opened my door and shone a flashlight in my face. Suicide watch, she explained. Standard procedure. On the second day, I asked for a notebook and a pen. They gave me crayons instead. No sharp object, the nurse said apologetically. So I wrote with crayons, blue and green and red, like a child's homework. I wrote everything I could remember. Dates, numbers, names, the dinner party, the black folder, the mortgages, the flash drive, Veronica's signature, Tyler's betrayal. I wrote, 1996, $320,000 from my parents' inheritance. Never repaid, never acknowledged, never forgotten. I wrote, Richard owes $47 million in personal guarantees. The company is failing. He needs the divorce to hide assets before the creditors come. I wrote, Veronica is a co-signer on the mortgages. If Richard goes down, she goes down with him. I wrote, they want me to seem crazy so that no one believes me when I tell the truth. On the third day, Amanda came to visit. They allowed one visitor per day for 30 minutes in a room with cameras and a guard by the door. She cried when she saw me. I was wearing hospital scrubs, grey cotton, shapeless, humiliating. My hair was unwashed. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours a night. Mom, she said, Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I came home and you were gone and there was a note on the door and I didn't know what to do do. It's okay, I said. It's not your fault. Sophie called a lawyer, a friend from college. She says this is illegal. She says they can't just take you without a real evaluation. They can. They did. And they'll do it again if I fight them the wrong way. Amanda wiped her eyes. What are we going to do? I took her hand, squeezed it. You're going to go home. You're going to act normal. You're going to let them think they've won. But listen to me. The flash drive is in my purse. They took it when I came in. When I get out, I need you to help me find someone who can analyze those documents. A forensic accountant. Someone who knows how to follow money. I don't know anyone like that. I might. There's a man named Carlos. He's Richard's driver. He sent me a message a few days ago. He said he needed to talk. Find him. Tell him I'll call as soon as I'm out. Amanda nodded. Okay, I can do that. And Amanda? Yes? Don't tell Tyler. Don't tell anyone except Sophie. No one else can know what we're planning. She left. The guard escorted her out. I went back to my room with the white walls and the window that didn't open, and I waited. On the 4th day, they released me. Dr. Finch signed the papers himself. I'm satisfied that you're not a danger to yourself or others, he said, as if he were doing me a favor. But I recommend ongoing therapy. Divorce can be very stressful. Thank you for your concern, I said, my voice flat. They gave me back my clothes, my phone, my purse. The flash drive was gone. I searched every pocket, every compartment. Nothing. Someone had taken it during my 72-hour stay. I walked out of Westport Psychiatric Center into the April sunlight. Amanda was waiting in the parking lot in her 10-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the rear bumper. They took the flash drive, I said as I got in the car. What? It was in my purse. Now it's gone. Someone took it. Amanda's face went pale. Veronica? Probably. Or someone she paid. We sat in silence for a moment. The parking lot was empty. Birds sang in the trees. It was a beautiful day. The kind of day that felt like a lie. What now? Amanda asked. Now we go home. To the house? No, to your apartment. But first we need to stop somewhere. I gave her directions. 20 minutes later, we pulled into the parking lot of a storage facility in Norwalk. What is this place? Amanda asked. My backup plan. I'd rented this storage unit 15 years ago. Richard didn't know about it. No one did. It was a 10 by 10 room filled with boxes of old photographs, tax returns from my years as a real estate broker, and a fireproof safe I'd bought at Costco for $200. I opened the safe. Inside was $15,000 in cash. Money I'd saved over the years, small amounts from the household budget that Richard never noticed. There was also a folder of documents, our original marriage certificate, the children's birth certificates, and copies of every major financial document I'd ever signed. And there was something else, a second flash drive, identical to the first. You made a copy, Amanda said. I made 2 copies, I said, the day after the dinner party, before I knew I'd need them. Amanda stared at me. Mom, you're paranoid. Yes. After 30 years with your father, I learned to always have a backup. We drove back to Stamford. I showered for the first time in 3 days. I ate real food. A sandwich Sophie made for me, turkey and cheese on wheat bread, the most delicious thing I'd ever tasted. And then I called Carlos. He answered on the second ring. Mrs. Brennan, thank God. I heard what they did. Are you okay? I'm fine. You said you needed to talk. Yes, but not on the phone. Can we meet? Somewhere private? We agreed on a diner in Bridgeport, far from Greenwich, far from anyone who might recognize us. I drove there, alone. Amanda wanted to come, but I told her no. This was something I needed to do myself. Carlos was already there when I arrived. He looked older than I remembered, tired. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, clothes I'd never seen him in. He always wore a suit when he worked for Richard. Mrs. Brennan, he said, standing when I approached. Please, sit down. I sat across from him. The diner was nearly empty. A waitress brought coffee without being asked. Thank you for meeting me, I said. I should have called you sooner. I'm sorry. I was scared. Scared of what? He looked down at his coffee. Mr. Brennan hasn't paid me in 8 months. He keeps saying the money is coming, that there are cash flow problems, that I need to be patient. But I have a family, 2 kids in college. I can't wait forever. 8 months? He's not paying a lot of people. The housekeepers, the gardeners, the maintenance crew at the office building. He owes thousands, tens of thousands. This confirmed what I'd seen on the flash drive. The company was bleeding money. Richard was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and eventually he'd run out of Peters. There's something else, Carlos said. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a flash drive. Black plastic, no label. What is this? Before they took your purse at the clinic, I made a copy. The night before you were taken. I saw the folder on the table at Miss Amanda's apartment when I was watching from my car. I came back early the next morning before they came for you. Miss Amanda let me in. I copied everything. I stared at him. You were watching me? I was watching the apartment. I had a feeling something was going to happen. Mrs. Wells, Mr. Brennan's sister. She's been making phone calls, meeting with lawyers. I drive her sometimes when Mr. Brennan's car is being used. I hear things. What kind of things? Carlos leaned closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. They're planning something bigger than the divorce. There's a deadline. Something about creditors. Something about June. June? That's all I know. But Mrs. Brennan, Olivia, you need to be careful. These people will do anything to protect themselves. Anything. I took the flash drive, held it in my hand. Such a small thing. Such a powerful thing. Why are you helping me? I asked. Carlos looked at me for a long moment. Because in 15 years, you're the only one who ever learned my children's names. I paid for his coffee. I gave him $5,000 from my safe. Partial payment for the 8 months Richard owed him. He tried to refuse. I insisted. Find another job, I told him. Get away from that family. It's going to collapse and you don't want to be there when it does. He nodded. What about you? I looked out the window of the diner. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and purple, beautiful and indifferent. Me? I said. I'm going to make sure I'm the one who pushes it over. The forensic accountant's name was Diane Howell. She worked out of a small office in Norwalk, above a dry cleaner, and she had a reputation for finding money that didn't want to be found. I met her 3 days after leaving Westport Psychiatric Center. Amanda drove me. We parked behind the building so no one would see my car. Diane woman was 62 years old, with grey hair pulled back in a tight bun and reading glasses perched on her nose. Her office was cluttered with files and binders, and she smelled faintly of coffee and cigarettes. "Mrs. Brennan," she said, shaking my hand, "I've heard about your situation. Please, sit down." I sat. Amanda waited in the car. This was something I needed to do alone. "I have documents," I said, pulling the flash drive from my purse. "Financial records from my husband's company. I need to understand what I'm looking at." Diane took the flash drive and plugged it into her computer. For 20 minutes, she scrolled through files, clicking and typing, her expression unreadable. Finally, she leaned back in her chair. "Where did you get these? Does it matter?" "Bah, it might, in court, but for now, let's assume it doesn't." She turned the monitor toward me. "Your husband is in serious trouble." I looked at the screen. Numbers, charts, names I didn't recognize. "Explain it to me like I'm not an accountant," I said. Diane smiled grimly. "Brennan Development Group has assets worth approximately $340 million on paper, but those assets are leveraged to the hilt. Your husband has taken out loans against almost everything: the commercial properties, the development projects, even the equipment. Total debt, approximately $89 million. $89 million? That's not the worst part. Of that $89 million, $47 million is secured by personal guarantees. Your husband's signature. If the company can pay, he pays. Personally." I felt dizzy. "And the house?" Diane clicked to another document. "The house on Round Hill Road has 3 mortgages. The first for $8 million was taken out in 2019. The second for $4 million in 2021. The third for $2 million just 6 months ago. Total, $14. $2 million against a property valued at $18 million. So there's only $8 million in equity. If you're lucky, real estate values have dropped in Greenwich this year. The house might be worth less than $18 million now. You could be looking at negative equity." I stared at the screen. 30 years of building a life, raising children, sacrificing my career, and my husband had mortgaged it all away without telling me. "There's something else," Diane said. She clicked to another file. "These are the signature pages from the mortgage documents. Your husband signed, obviously, but there's a co-signer on all 3. I already knew the answer, but I asked anyway. "Who?" "Veronica Brennan Wells, as power of attorney for the family trust." "The family trust?" "It's complicated, but essentially, the house isn't just in your husband's name. It's held by a trust that Veronica controls. She's been using that trust to secure loans without your knowledge." I thought about Veronica at the dinner party, her satisfied smile, her grey Armani suit. She hadn't just helped Richard humiliate me, she'd helped him steal my financial future. "What happens if Richard can't pay the mortgages?" I asked. "The bank forecloses. The house gets sold. And since Veronica is a co-signer, she's personally liable for any shortfall. So if Richard goes down, Veronica goes down with him." I sat with that information for a moment. The 2 people who had orchestrated my humiliation were tied together by 14. $2 million in debt they couldn't afford. "There's a deadline," I said, remembering what Carlos had told me. "Something about June." Diane nodded. "June 15th. That's when the largest loan, a $23 million line of credit for the company, comes due. If Richard can't refinance or pay it off, the creditors can call all his other loans. It's a domino effect." "And can he refinance?" "Not without showing clean financials, which he doesn't have. The company has been losing money for 3 years. He's been hiding it with creative accounting, but that only works for so long." I understood now. Richard didn't just want a divorce. He needed one. He needed to separate his personal assets from the company before everything collapsed. He needed me to sign away my rights before I discovered the truth, and he'd almost succeeded. "What are my options?" I asked. Diane took off her reading glasses. "You have 2. Option 1, fight for half of everything. Go to court, demand a full accounting, expose the debts. You might get something, but it'll be a fraction of what you thought you'd get, and the legal fees will eat most of it. And option 2, let him have it all." I blinked. "What?" "Let him have the house, the company, the cars, everything. Don't contest anything. Just walk away." "How is that better?" Diane smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who had seen this game played before. "Because right now Richard thinks he's winning. He thinks you don't know about the debts. He thinks that when the divorce is final, he'll own assets worth $340 million, and you'll be gone with $500,000 and a used car. But the assets aren't worth $340 million. Exactly. They're worth negative $12 million once you factor in the guarantees. If you fight him, you'll have time to restructure, hide assets, maybe even declare bankruptcy strategically. But if you let him win quickly, he inherits the disaster, and you walk away clean. No debt, no liability, no connection to the collapse." I thought about it. 30 years of marriage, 30 years of sacrifice, and my revenge would be nothing, walking away with nothing. But nothing was better than negative $12 million. "There's a risk," Diane continued. "If you accept his offer too easily, he might get suspicious. He might wonder why you're not fighting. So I need to make it look like I'm losing. You need to make it look like you've given up, like the psychiatric hold broke you, like you're too beaten down to fight." I thought about the woman I'd been for 30 years, the smiling wife, the quiet hostess, the invisible partner. I could play that role one more time, just once more, and then never again. "How do I make sure the debts transfer to him?" I asked. "You request a full inventory of marital assets before signing anything. Make it seem like a formality, like you're protecting yourself, but insist that all assets and liabilities be documented. Once it's on the record, he can't deny he knew about the debts. And Veronica, if she's smart, she's already looking for a way out. But she's too deep. The mortgages have her name on them. When the house goes, she goes." I stood up. My legs were steady. My mind was clear. "How much do I owe you for this consultation?" Diane waved her hand. "First one's free. If you want me to testify in court about what I've found, we can talk about fees later." "I won't need you to testify." She raised an eyebrow. "No? No, because there won't be a trial. Richard is going to give me exactly what I want." "And what's that?" I picked up my purse, checked that the flash drive was safely slowly inside. He's going to give me nothing, I said, and he's going to think he won. 2 weeks later, I stood in a courtroom in Stamford. Richard was there, in his $200 Tom Ford suit, looking confident. Veronica was beside him, whispering something to his lawyer. Tyler sat in the gallery, avoiding my eyes. Amanda and Sophie were there too, in the back row. My supporters, my witnesses. The judge was a tired-looking woman in her 60s. She'd seen 1,000 divorces. This was just another one. Mrs. Brennan, she said, I understand you've agreed to the proposed settlement? I stood. My voice was steady. I have, Your Honor. And you understand what you're agreeing to? You're accepting $500,000 and a vehicle and relinquishing all claims to the marital home, the family business, and all other assets? I understand. Richard smiled. Veronica smiled. They thought they'd won. However, I continued, I request that the court require a complete inventory of all marital assets and liabilities before I sign the final agreement. Richard's smile flickered. What? It's a standard request, my lawyer said. He was young, recommended by Diane, and he knew exactly what we were doing. My client simply wants to know the full scope of what she's relinquishing. The judge nodded. That's reasonable. Mr. Brennan, do you object? Richard looked at Veronica. She shook her head slightly. They didn't see the trap. No objection, Richard said. Then we'll reconvene in 30 days for the final hearing. Mr. Brennan, please provide a complete inventory of all assets and liabilities, including any personal guarantees, mortgages, or other encumbrances within 2 weeks. Richard nodded, still smiling. He had no idea what he'd just agreed to. I walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Amanda met me in the hallway. Mom, are you sure about this? You're really letting him have everything? I took her hand. I'm letting him have exactly what he deserves. But the house, the money, the house is drowning in debt. The money is owed to banks and creditors. In 2 months, Richard Brennan is going to be the proud owner of negative $12 million. Amanda stared at me. You planned this. I survived this. There's a difference. That night, I sat in Amanda's apartment and drank cheap wine from a coffee mug. The apartment was small, the furniture was worn, and the neighbors were loud, but I was free. Not completely free, not yet. There was still the final hearing. Still the inventory that would expose Richard's lies. Still the moment when he would realize what he'd done. But for the first time in 30 years, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't smiling for cameras or hosting parties or signing checks for a life that wasn't really mine. I was just Olivia, 52 years old, starting over. And somewhere, in a mansion in Greenwich, my husband was celebrating his victory. He had no idea it was actually his funeral. The final hearing was on June 3rd, 2024, exactly 80 days after the dinner party where my husband had announced our divorce in front of 43 guests. I woke up at 5 a.m. that morning. Amanda's apartment was quiet. Sophie was still asleep in the bedroom. I sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise over the parking lot. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't scared. I was ready. At 8:30, Amanda drove me to the courthouse. She was wearing a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back, her face serious. My daughter, the one Richard had never fully accepted, the one who had stood by me when everyone else walked away. Are you sure you don't want me in there? She asked as we parked. I'm sure. This is something I need to do alone. But what if Amanda? I took her hand. Whatever happens in that courtroom, I've already won. He just doesn't know it yet. She hugged me. I held her tight for a moment, then let go. I'll be in the car, she said. Call me the second it's over. The courthouse was a grey building with fluorescent lights and the smell of old paper. I walked through security, past the metal detectors, up to the 3rd floor where family court was held. Richard was already there. He was standing in the hallway with Veronica and his lawyer, a silver-haired man named Patterson who charged $800 an hour. They were laughing about something. Richard looked relaxed, confident, like a man who had already won. Tyler was there too. My son. He was sitting on a bench near the courtroom door, staring at his phone. He didn't look up when I walked past. I went into the courtroom and sat at the table on the left. My lawyer, David Chen, was already there, organizing papers. Are you ready? He asked. I've been ready for 30 years. The judge entered at 9 a.m. sharp. The Honorable Margaret Whitfield, 63 years old, known for her no-nonsense approach and her dislike of wealthy men who tried to hide assets. Diane Howell had recommended her specifically. This is the final hearing in the matter of Brennan versus Brennan, the judge said. I've reviewed the settlement agreement and the asset inventory provided by the respondent. Before we proceed, are there any objections? Richard's lawyer stood. No objections, Your Honor. My client is prepared to finalize the settlement as agreed. Mrs. Brennan, any objections? I stood. My voice was calm. No objections, Your Honor. However, I would like the court to confirm, for the record, that my husband has disclosed all assets and liabilities as required. The judge nodded. Mr. Brennan, you have submitted a complete inventory. Richard stood, smoothing his tie. Yes, Your Honor. Everything is disclosed, including all personal guarantees, mortgages, and corporate liabilities. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Richard's face. Yes, everything. The judge turned to David. Mr. Chen, you've reviewed the inventory? David stood. He was holding a thick folder, the same folder Diane Howell had prepared. I have, Your Honor, and I have some questions. Richard's lawyer frowned. Your Honor, this was supposed to be a simple finalization. Mr. Patterson, if there are questions about the inventory, I'd like to hear them. Mr. Chen, proceed. David opened the folder. According to the inventory submitted by Mr. Brennan, the family home at 847 Round Hill Road is valued at $18 million. Is that correct? Richard nodded. Yes, and there are no encumbrances on the property. Richard looked at Veronica. She was staring straight ahead, her face blank. There may be some mortgages. Some mortgages? David pulled out a document. Your Honor, I have here records of 3 mortgages on the property, totaling $2 million. These were not disclosed in the inventory. The courtroom went silent. Richard's face turned red. There must be a mistake, he said. No mistake, Mr. Brennan. David pulled out more documents. The first mortgage, for $8 million, million was taken out in 2019, the second for $4 million in 2021, the third for $2 million in December of last year. All three are co-signed by Veronica Brennan Wells as power of attorney for the Brennan Family Trust. I looked at Veronica. Her face had gone pale. Her hands were gripping the armrests of her chair. Furthermore, David continued, the corporate assets of Brennan Development Group are listed at $340 million. But according to public records and financial statements obtained through discovery, the company has outstanding debts of approximately $89 million, including $47 million in personal guarantees, signed by Mr. Brennan. Richard's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, we need a recess. Sit down, Mr. Patterson. The judge's voice was ice. Mr. Brennan, did you knowingly submit an incomplete inventory to this court? Richard was sweating now. The company finances are complicated. I may have overlooked $89 million in debt? It's not. The assets are worth more than... Mr. Chen, the judge turned to David. What is your client's position? David smiled. My client is prepared to accept the settlement as originally proposed. She will take $500,000 in the 2021 Mercedes. Mr. Brennan may keep the house, the company, and all other assets. The judge raised an eyebrow. All other assets, including the liabilities? Yes, Your Honor. All assets and liabilities. Richard stood up. Wait a minute. If I take the house with the mortgages and the company with the debts, you will be the proud owner of a net negative estate of approximately $12 million, David said pleasantly. Congratulations. The courtroom erupted. Richard was shouting at his lawyer. Veronica was shouting at Richard. Tyler, in the gallery, was staring at his father with an expression I had never seen before. Confusion, betrayal, understanding. The judge banged her gavel. Order! Order in this court. It took several minutes for the room to quiet down. When it did, the judge turned to Richard. Mr. Brennan, you have two options. You can accept the settlement as proposed, with all assets and liabilities, or you can withdraw the settlement and proceed to litigation, where I assure you the court will conduct a full forensic audit of your finances. Richard's lawyer whispered something in his ear. Richard's face went from red to white. We accept the settlement, he said, his voice barely audible. So ordered. The judge signed the document. This divorce is final. Mrs. Brennan, you are awarded $500,000 and one vehicle. Mr. Brennan retains all other marital assets and assumes all marital liabilities. Court is adjourned. I stood. My legs were steady. My heart was calm. As I walked toward the door, I stopped at Veronica's seat. She was still sitting there, staring at nothing, her face ashen. I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope. This is for you. She looked at me. What is it? A gift. I placed the envelope in her lap. Emails between you and Monica Saldanha, planning my psychiatric commitment, discussing how to break me before I could discover the truth. Veronica's hand trembled as she picked up the envelope. How did you? It doesn't matter how. What matters is that I haven't given these to anyone else. Yet. I leaned close. My voice was a whisper. You helped him steal 30 years of my life. You helped him hide millions in debt. You helped him try to destroy my sanity, and now you're tied to him. Co-signer on $2 million in mortgages. Co-conspirator in fraud. I didn't know about all the debt. That's not my problem. I straightened up. The house will be foreclosed within a year, maybe less. When it happens, the bank will come after you, personally. And when they do, you might want to have a good lawyer. A better one than your brother's. I walked out of the courtroom. In the hallway, Tyler was waiting. He stepped in front of me, blocking my path. Mom! I stopped. Looked at him, my son, 27 years old, the boy I had raised, fed, loved, the man who had betrayed me for a promise of money that no longer existed. Tyler, I didn't know. His voice cracked. I swear, Mom, I didn't know about the debts. Dad said, he said we'd be rich. He said you were just being greedy. He said a lot of things. You believed him. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please, Mom, please forgive me. I looked at him for a long moment. This boy who had chosen his father's lies over his mother's truth. This boy who had conspired to have me committed. This boy who was now crying in a courthouse hallway, realizing that everything his father had promised was dust. Forgiveness takes time, I said finally, but you can start earning it. How? Your sisters, Amanda and Sophie. They've been supporting me while you were counting your inheritance. They need help with rent, with groceries, with life. If you want to be part of this family again, you can start there. Tyler nodded, tears streaming down his face. Okay, I'll do it. I'll do whatever it takes. We'll see. I walked past him, out of the courthouse, into the June sunlight. Amanda was waiting in the car. She saw my face and knew. It's done? It's done. She hugged me across the center console, awkward and fierce. I'm so proud of you, Mom. I hugged her back, and for the first time in months, I cried. Not tears of sadness, not tears of anger, tears of relief. It was over. The marriage, the lies, the pretending. I was free. But as we drove away from the courthouse, I thought about the envelope I'd given Veronica, the emails I still had copies of, the documents I hadn't used yet. Veronica was finished. Richard was finished. The empire they'd built on my sacrifice was crumbling, but there was still one loose end. Monica Saldanha, the woman who had been sleeping with my husband for 9 years, the mother of his secret child, the co-conspirator who had helped plan my destruction. She was still out there, still living in some apartment Richard had probably paid for, still thinking she had escaped consequences. She hadn't. I had plans for Monica too, but that was a story for another day. 3 months later, I was standing in a kitchen that wasn't mine, cooking dinner for people who loved me. It was September 15th, 2024. The apartment was small, a 3-bedroom in Hartford that I shared with Amanda and Sophie. The kitchen was cramped, the appliances were old, and the window looked out on a parking lot instead of a manicured garden. It was the most beautiful place I'd ever lived. Sophie was setting the table. Amanda was opening a bottle of wine, a $12 Pinot Grigio, nothing like the $200 bottles Richard used to buy. And Tyler was there too, sitting awkwardly on the worn couch, looking like he wasn't sure if he belonged. He'd been coming around more often lately. True to his word, he'd started helping his sisters. He paid half their rent for the past 2 months. He showed up with groceries. He fixed the leaky faucet that the landlord had been ignoring for weeks. He was trying. I could see that. Whether it was enough, whether it would ever be enough, I still didn't know. "Dinner's ready," I called out. We sat around the small table. 4 chairs, 4 plates, 4 people who had survived something together. The meal was simple. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive. It was perfect. "Mom," Amanda said, raising her glass, "I want to make a toast." "Oh, honey, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." She looked at me with those serious eyes, the eyes of a woman who had seen her mother broken and rebuilt. "To Mom, who taught us that strength isn't about fighting, it's about knowing when to walk away." Sophie raised her glass. "To Mom." Tyler raised his too, his hand trembling slightly. "To Mom." I raised mine, but I didn't drink right away. I looked at each of them, my children, my survivors, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 30 years. Peace. "To us," I said, "to whatever comes next." We drank. After dinner, while Amanda and Sophie washed dishes, Tyler followed me out to the small balcony. The night was cool. Stars were visible above the city lights. "Mom," he said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever regret it? Not fighting for the house, the money, all of it?" I thought about the mansion on Round Hill Road, 12,000 square feet, Italian marble, French windows. I thought about the dinner parties, the charity galas, the endless performance of being Mrs. Richard Brennan. "No," I said, "not for a second." "But you gave up millions." "I gave up debt. I gave up lies. I gave up a prison that looked like a palace." I turned to face him. "Tyler, do you know what I gained?" He shook his head. "I gained myself. For 30 years, I was someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's hostess. I forgot who I was before all of that. Now I remember." "Who were you?" I smiled. "I was a woman who sold commercial real estate, who closed deals and negotiated contracts and didn't take shit from anyone. I was good at it. Really good. And now I'm doing it again." I pulled out my phone, showed him a photo. A small office building in downtown Hartford. I closed my first sale last week, a warehouse conversion. Twos, $3 million. My commission was $69,000. Tyler stared at the photo. That's more than Dad offered you in the settlement." "Yes, it is." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I know I keep saying it, but I'm really, truly sorry for everything. I know you are. Is there anything else I can do? Anything to make it right?" I looked at my son, the boy who had chosen money over family, the man who was slowly learning that some things couldn't be bought. "There is one thing," I said. "Anything." "Your father. He's been calling you, hasn't he?" Tyler's face tightened. "Yes, every day. He wants me to help him. He says if I testify that you manipulated me, he might be able to." "Don't. I wasn't going to. I swear, Mom, I wasn't." "I know." I put my hand on his arm. "But I want you to do something else. I want you to visit him." Tyler looked confused. "Visit him? After everything he did?" "Not for him, for you. See what he's become, see where that path leads, and then decide, once and for all, what kind of man you want to be." I got the call 3 days later. It was from Veronica's assistant. She was crying. "Mrs. Brennan, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I didn't know who else to call. Mrs. Wells is. She's in the hospital. She had a breakdown. They found her in her office at 3 a.m., shredding documents. She was talking to herself, saying the walls were closing in." I listened. I didn't interrupt. The assistant told me everything. The bank had started foreclosure proceedings on the mansion 2 weeks ago. When they discovered the mortgages were co-signed by Veronica, they came after her personal assets too. Her apartment in Manhattan, her retirement accounts, everything. Her law firm had forced her to resign. Her reputation was destroyed, and when the walls finally closed in, she broke. "I know you don't owe her anything," the assistant said. "I know she was terrible to you, but she's alone. She has no one. I thought you should know. Thank you for telling me," I said. I hung up. I sat in my small living room and thought about Veronica, the woman who had smiled at my humiliation, who had helped plan my psychiatric commitment, who had co-signed millions in debt without questioning where the money was going. She was alone now, broken, defeated. I could have felt satisfaction, revenge, finally complete, but I didn't. I felt tired of anger, tired of hatred, tired of carrying the weight of what other people had done to me. So I made a decision. I picked up the phone. I called a number I'd saved months ago. "Carlos, it's Olivia. I need a favor." An hour later, Carlos picked me up in his old Honda. We drove to a psychiatric facility in Westchester. Not the same one where I'd been held, but similar. Same white walls, same locked doors, same smell of disinfectant and despair. Veronica was in a room at the end of the hall. She was sitting in a chair by the window, staring at nothing. Her hair was unwashed. Her eyes were hollow. She looked 20 years older than the last time I'd seen her. I sat down across from her. "Veronica." She didn't respond at first. Then, slowly, she turned her head. When she saw me, something flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe. Or shame. "Olivia?" Her voice was a whisper. "Why are you here?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I wanted to see you. To understand." "Understand what?" Why you hated me so much? Veronica laughed, a bitter, broken sound. I didn't hate you. I envied you. Envied me? You had everything I wanted. A husband who came home every night. Children who loved you. A life that looked perfect. She shook her head. I worked 80 hours a week. I sacrificed everything for my career. And in the end, what did I have? An apartment full of awards and no one to share them with. So you helped Richard destroy me. I helped Richard because he was family. Because I thought if I helped him, he would finally see me. Finally appreciate me. But he didn't. He never did. I was just another tool to him. Just like you. I sat with that for a moment. The two of us, enemies for 30 years, finally seeing each other clearly. I'm not going to forgive you, I said. What you did was unforgivable. I know. But I'm not going to carry you anymore either. The anger, the hatred, I'm done with it. You have to live with what you did. That's your punishment, not mine. I stood up, walked to the door. Olivia, Veronica's voice stopped me. What happened to Richard? I turned back. You don't know? They won't let me use the phone. They won't let me see the news. I don't know anything. I thought about Richard, about the last 3 months, about everything that had happened since the courthouse. The company went bankrupt, I said. The creditors took everything. The mansion is in foreclosure. The cars were repossessed. Richard is living in a one-bedroom apartment in Bridgeport, working as a consultant for a construction company that pays him $85,000 a year. Veronica's face crumpled. $85,000? He used to spend that much on wine. And Monica, the mistress? Gone. Left the day she found out there was no money. Took the boy with her. Richard hasn't seen his son in 2 months. Veronica covered her face with her hands. She was crying now, sobbing, for Richard, for herself, for the empire that had crumbled to dust. I watched her for a moment, then I left. That night, I did something I'd been putting off for weeks. I called the number Carlos had given me. The number for Monica Saldanha. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hello? Monica, this is Olivia Brennan. Silence. Then, Mrs. Brennan, I've been expecting your call. Have you? Richard told me you'd come after me eventually. He said you were vindictive, that you'd want revenge. I almost laughed. Richard said a lot of things. Most of them were lies. I know that now. More silence. I could hear a child in the background. Ethan, presumably. The 6-year-old boy who had never met his half-sibling, who had been raised on promises that would never be kept. What do you want? Monica asked finally. I want to know if you're okay. The question surprised her. I could hear it in her voice. What? You spent 9 years with that man. You had his child, and then you discovered it was all a lie. I want to know if you're okay. Monica didn't answer for a long time. When she did, her voice was thick with tears. No, I'm not okay. I'm 36 years old. I'm a single mother, and the man I thought loved me was just using me as a backup plan. I gave him the best years of my life, and now I have nothing. I closed my eyes. I remembered being 36. I remembered being in love with Richard, believing his promises, building a life on his lies. Monica, I'm going to tell you something that took me 30 years to learn. What? You have more than nothing. You have yourself. You have your son, and you have time. Time to build something real, something that belongs to you. Don't waste it the way I did. Why are you being kind to me? I helped them plan your commitment. I was part of it. I know, and I haven't forgotten, but I've decided that revenge isn't worth the price. I spent 30 years being angry at the wrong people. I'm done. I could hear Monica crying softly. I'm sorry, Mrs. Brennan. I'm so sorry. I know you are. I paused. Take care of yourself, Monica. Take care of Ethan. That's all the revenge I need. I hung up. 1 month later, I stood in the doorway of my new office. It was small, just one room on the 3rd floor of a building in downtown Hartford. The furniture was second-hand. The view was a brick wall, but the name on the door was mine. Olivia Brennan, Commercial Real Estate. Amanda had helped me paint the walls. Sophie had found the desk at an estate sale. Tyler had hung the shelves. My children, my team, my future. That morning, I closed my second major deal, a retail complex in New Haven. $4, cut $1 million. Commission, $123,000. More money than Richard had offered me in the divorce settlement. I was building something new, something real, something that belonged to me. But there was still one thing left unfinished. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a document I'd never used. The email showing Veronica's $1 million transfer to an offshore account. Proof of embezzlement. Proof that could destroy whatever was left of her life. I held it for a long moment. Then I walked to the shredder and fed it through. The past was the past. I was done with it. My phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. Mom, Dad wants to see you. He says he's dying. Heart failure. Doctors give him 6 months. He wants to apologize before it's too late. Should I give him your number? I stared at the message. Richard was dying. The man who had humiliated me, stolen from me, tried to destroy me. He was dying, and he wanted forgiveness. I thought about it for a long time. The anger, the pain, the 30 years of silence. Then I typed my reply. No. I put down the phone. I looked out the window at the brick wall, at the sliver of sky visible above it, at the world that was waiting for me. I had a business to build, a life to live, children who needed me. Richard Brennan had taken enough of my time. He wasn't going to take any more.